So Anthropic just dropped Fable 5, a Mythos-class model which was thought too dangerous to be released to public, mainly because of how good it is at cybersecurity, specifically in finding and exploiting software vulnerabilities. So it's currently limited to government cybersecurity and critical infrastructure teams. Fable 5 is that same underlying model, same brain, but with safety guardrails in place so the rest of us can actually use it. Now there's been a lot of benchmark tests and scores that tells you it's much better than other current models. But how much better is it in practice? Today, I'm taking Fable 5 for a spin against Opus 4.8, both in Claude Cowork and Code. Same prompts, same setup, head-to-head. In the first test, I'll run a full sales prospecting workflow in Cowork, which includes ideal client profile research, Apollo search with Lemlist fallback, and building a complete outbound sequences. That's a multi-tool call chain, exactly where models usually lose the plot. And then, in the second test, I'll run Claude Code with Fable 5 as a video editor, which requires heavy load file operations, long-running renders, the kind of grind that punishes any model that can't stay focused. But before we dive right in, I just want to take a second to talk about Fable 5 and how it's fundamentally different. So first, the guardrails. As mentioned, it's a Mythos-grade model. So how did Anthropic make Fable 5 safe for public? It does so by making sure that sensitive topics and requests are not being processed directly by Fable 5. When Fable detects a request touching cybersecurity, biology, chemistry, or model distillation, it doesn't refuse you. It silently hands your question to Opus 4.8 instead, and tells you it did. Anthropic's early data says about 95% of the sessions never trigger that at all, so you're effectively getting Mythos-level performance. Secondly, Fable 5 is a full tier above Opus. This isn't an Opus upgrade, it's a new class. On Software Engineering Benchmark, Fable scores 80.3% versus Opus 4.8's 69.2%, an 11-point jump. On Frontier Code Diamond, it more than doubles Opus. Third, it's built for long-running work. This is a real headline. Fable can work autonomously longer than any previous Claude, staying on task across millions of tokens. For example, Stripe, the payment gateway, used it to compress month-long 50 million line code migration that would have taken months into days. The bigger and messier the task, the wider the gap versus Opus. Fourth, it checks its own work. At the highest effort, Fable reflects on and validates its own output before handing it back. This means fewer half-finished jobs, fewer instances of the model skipping steps. Now, important caveat before we start. Fable 5 is significantly more expensive. On the API, it's $10 per million input tokens and $50 per million output. This is exactly double Opus 4.8's $5 and $25. Every rate on the card, including caching and batch, is 2x. And if you're on Claude subscription, Fable is included in Pro, Max, Team, and Enterprise only until 22nd of June. After that, it needs usage credits. So the real question I'm trying to answer here today is not whether Fable 5 is better. It is on paper. The question is the cost worth the price? So let's find out. Real quick, if you find videos like these useful, please hit that like button and consider subscribing. It really does help a lot. Now let's dive right in. Okay, so the first thing you probably want to know is how do you get access to Fable 5, right? So if you're on the Claude desktop or opening up Claude from your browser, it isn't an easy pick from the model over here. So I'm in Cowork right now, but it works the same way if you're in chat. You can obviously pick the model. So Fable 5 is just listed over here, and Cowork, it's going to be over here as well. So you want to pick that if you're trying to access Fable 5. Now, if you're on Claude Code, what you want to do is do a /model, and you'll see the list of models over here. And Fable 5 should be listed as one of the models, so you want to go ahead and switch it over to Fable 5, and then you would have your model as Fable 5 running. But if for some reason you don't see Fable 5 on the list, which sometimes happens, what you want to do is just exit Claude for a second and go into your terminal. And what you want to do is just type in Claude space dash model space Claude dash Fable dash 5. So if you do that, it will automatically set it to Fable 5. So here, the first thing you want to do is we're going to run the full end-to-end sales prospecting process, which I've covered previously in my videos before. So we know that Opus is capable of running this process, but I think the real test here is how good are they at actually following up with the personalization, following up with all the minor details that comes along with creating an outbound sequences that is effective for sales. So here, obviously, I have a fictitious directory called sales operations. So this is just the background context of the company, of who we're running the sales prospecting for, because you obviously need the brand voice, you obviously need the products and services to sell. So just coming up with that. And of course, if you want to know how to set up context on Cowork, I've also done a previous video about that using Andre Kaparti's wiki method, which would help you with the persistent memory, help Claude Cowork stay in context. Just check it out. I'll link it up here down in the description below as well. But here, it's just basically some markdown files of what the company is about. I will run the same prompt and the same task on 4.8, and then so we can look at the results, and then I'll run it on Fable 5. So now what I want to do is just paste the entire prompt that I've generated using other LLMs essentially telling it that it's an outbound operations agent for Automate with Marc. So we're pretending that this is Automate with Marc AI automation agencies reaching out to small businesses, any other businesses out there to automate their business processes. So there are a couple phases in the prompts: ICP, ideal client profile, and persona brief. What are the demographics, what are the segments, and how we are going to outreach to these. We have basically split the segments into two for marketing teams as well as sales teams. So how can Automate with Marc help automate the sales process and marketing process? So each of these segments should have a different voice, a different type of delivery. So actually, before I do that, I want to go over to Customize and show you that the tools that we're using here are actually Apollo and Lemlist, all right? So we don't currently have those connected yet, so I'm just going to show you very quickly how to connect those. Apollo is the enrichment tool that we're using. So basically, this is finding out the prospects within your industry, the roles. You'll be able to tell it something like, for example, I want to reach out to a senior VP of marketing in this particular industry with this particular size of companies. And then it's going to give you the list of that. And then you'll be able to find out what their emails are, what their LinkedIn profiles are, their phone numbers, and then you can actually run outbound sequences at them. So connecting to Apollo is a simple connect because it's off the shelf with Claude Cowork. And essentially, you want to authorize it. There'll be a pop-up on your browser. Make sure that it's the same browser that you're accessing Apollo. So you're going to click Authorize. And if you don't already have an Apollo account, you do need to go to Apollo and sign up. And that will make sure that you're connected. So here you have Apollo connected. And the second thing that we want to connect is Lemlist. I already have it connected right here. But with Lemlist, it's a little bit different. What you want to do is add custom connector. The name will be Lemlist. And meanwhile, for the remote MCP server URL, you want to go over to this page.com/how to set up Lemlist MCP. And basically, this is the URL that you want to grab. Just copy that. And again, I will link this down in the description below in case you want to follow it. But so this is how you would add the URL in. And once you add that, it's the same thing. You hit connect, and then a browser will pop up, and you need to authenticate on the same browser that you have access to Lemlist. So Lemlist is an outbound sequencer tool, right? A lot of people ask me, you have Apollo, why are you using Lemlist? So I know Apollo already has an outbound sequencer, but on Lemlist, you actually have the options to outbound through LinkedIn, as well as other channels now with calls, SMS, and WhatsApp. So everything can be provisioned directly from Lemlist, even the phone numbers, the email inboxes, secondary email inboxes, which is really relevant if you're doing this at scale. But so here I've connected the two tools. So what we want to do is just go back to Cowork here. So let's just send that, and we'll see what comes of it. All right, it's just asking me for some permissions. I'm going to do always allow this task. Okay, so it looks like it's done working. So it's coming back with this file over here, which I'm going to open. And as you can see, it's successfully getting the personas. And then here are the prospect tables. Of course, we're starting out with 10, not a very extensive list. Essentially, it's matching the roles: head of marketing, marketing growth, CMO, and also VP of sales. So the segments are being bifurcated to marketing and sales with the email addresses that we can outreach to immediately, right? Now, some of these are not available. We only have the LinkedIn profile and not the email address, but it's okay. That might be a tool limitation, so I'm not going to read too much into that. Let me just open this up a little bit. And here are the email sequences that it's come up with. So for marketing, it says most marketing teams produce strong content but lose hours turning each piece into emails, which will post landing pages by hand. We build marketing workflows that do repurposing automatically. One client turned a single webinar into 20 assets in about 4 hours instead of 2 weeks worth of look. Okay, that's not too bad. Researching how marketing companies. So LinkedIn connection request is just, pretty full on as a LinkedIn connection request. I wouldn't personally do that, but okay, if I had to pick one automation, every webinar, podcast, long form becomes a set of emails. Social. Okay, yeah, pretty good automation, I suppose. Okay, so the emails, I would grade it maybe 7 out of 10. Not too great, but maybe that has to do with the context and stuff like that. So I wouldn't necessarily knock a point off Opus 1.8 just for that. But I think what's interesting is seeing how it negotiates on some of the roadblocks that we have with the tools, right? So for example, I'm actually on a free plan on Apollo. I have 100 credits, but a couple of things are not available on those free plans. So, a couple of things are blocked. Ultimately, it wasn't able to push the campaigns directly on Lemlist, as you can see over here. It says that the one instruction I couldn't execute literally is creating campaign objects plus live sequences on Lemlist, which is plant gated. Everything else was adapted to working routes. So let's try it with Fable 5 and see if there's any difference in terms of the quality of the personas as well as the quality of the sequences. Okay, so I'm going to run the same exact prompt, but this time we're going to choose Fable 5 and then, we're going to run that. and see how it does. So, okay, in terms of number of steps, it's actually less steps than what we saw on 4.8, but essentially still kind of going through the same typical phases, and we'll see if it's able to navigate through that. Now, all right, so it seems like Fable 5 has completed the operation in terms of getting the prospects as well as lining up the sequences. So off the bat, I can see that the approach is slightly different and the output is different too. As you can see, it is actually coming up with a table of the lead list. So these are the table of the people that Fable 5 thinks that will be worth for us to outreach to. And of course, this is separated into marketing and sales, as you can see. So right off the bat, you see that it's a bit more organized. It actually tells you whether, based on the email status, that it's actually an active email. There's LinkedIn URL over there. Source tool, it tells you whether you got it from Apollo, a Lemlist, signal type, and actual openness that are personalized to each of these guys. So you can see that it says, notice your storytelling, so you run global sales. So it actually went into each of these individuals and kind of did a bit of research as to what they're doing and be able to talk to them in a very hyper-personalized way to their context. So I would say that this is very comprehensive. Again, this is the exact same prompt that we've given to Opus 4.8, and it didn't come up with something as comprehensive as this for sure. But I think the roadblocks that it hit with Lemlist and Apollo is similar. So it was a Lemlist limitation not to have the campaigns pushed because I'm on a free plan, because my Lemlist instance that's connected to this particular Claude desktop is not a paid plan, which probably I shouldn't have used that one, so I should have used my paid one. But in any case, if it pushes the campaign to Lemlist, you'd just be able to see the exact same thing on Lemlist and be able to just essentially push it out and activate the campaign, which makes it a full end-to-end workflow. But in this case, because that was blocked, it wasn't able to do that. But what I want to point out is, I guess, the comprehensiveness or the thoughtfulness with which it approaches the task is very different from what we've seen with Opus 4.8. The way it even sequences the 5-touch sequence, running you through the logic behind that, and gives you a run log at the end, what's blocked on the tool side. And at the very end, I think what's noteworthy is the self-audit, which we talked about earlier. It's going to self-check, it's going to self-reflect, which Opus 4.8 did not do. So that's something that's going to help you in continuous improvements and help the model in continuous improvement. But at the same time, you'd be able to eyeball what went wrong during the run and be able to fix that as well. Overall, Fable 5 is unsurprisingly better than Opus 4.8. However, with the price tag says 2x, I'm not too sure if I'm going to switch over to Fable 5 for every run of this workflow, because this is a workflow that's going to run pretty regularly. So you probably don't want to always use Fable 5 for these. And so what you can do is actually have Fable 5 do a first run of whatever new workflows that you want to build. It's going to build it in the most comprehensive way, in the most thoughtful way, and probably in the most effective way. And then have it build a skill or build a framework on how to run this workflow, and then pass it on to a lesser model like Sonnet or Opus 4.8 if you want. But essentially, once you have the framework or template ready for the model to follow, you can use a cheaper model to actually run the same workflows, just so that you're efficient with your costs and tokens. So next, we're going to run a video editor workflow with Claude Code this time. And we're going to compare the output of Fable 5 and the output of Opus 4.8 with the same prompt, same base videos, and see which one comes out on top. So now on to the second test. We're going to run an editing and animation workflow for a video of mine. The tool that I'm setting up for Claude Code to use to add the visual animation to a talking head that looks like this, it's called Remotion, right? So there are a couple of alternatives to this. Hyperframes is another. But right now I'm using Remotion. So the raw video looks like this.
The speed and development in AI is crazy, and it can be overwhelming sometimes. You've probably heard of all the different models, workflow tools, and agents being thrown around, and saw a bunch of really cool demos on YouTube and Instagram. But how are they different? And which one should you use? This video is an easy-to-understand explainer of all the models, tools, and agents out there that people are hyping up about. What they actually do, whether it's for you, without all the technical jargon. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of the differences between LLM models like GPT or Claude, and workflow tools like Claude Cowork or OpenAI's agent mode, and wide coding tools like Claude Code and Codex, and agent tools like OpenClaw and Hermes. I'll also explain which one is best suited for your needs and role, depending on whether you're a business owner, an employee in a non-technical teams, or just somebody looking to optimize your efficiency. This is the AI explainer without the hype.
Okay, so that's the entire video. It's just the intro part, of course. It's a minute long. And essentially, we're going to have Remotion or Claude Code with Remotion overlay visual animations to explain the concepts that I just talked about. First, it's got to infer the narration from the video. It's a lot of different phases of the work, and it's a complex task, so it's a pretty good test to see if it does better than Opus 4.8. But here now, just to be sure, /model, that we're using Fable 5. Okay, so now we are with Fable 5 and we want to give it a prompt. And this is the whole prompt, right? So it's a pretty elaborate prompt with stages. And of course, I've used another LLM to kind of come up with the prompt. And of course, the video itself, I've input into a particular folder, which I've pointing it towards that. So this is what I'm just going to give it. Here's a video in this folder. Here's how I want it done in this style. And then it's going to come up with the visuals and the logos, go out to the internet and search the correct logos for all the names that I've kind of talked about and not just write out the text and stuff like that. So I'm going to just send this over to Claude Code and see how it does. All right, so it's just going through the process. It does take a while, both for Opus and Fable 5, but let's see how it turns out. All right, so it looks like it's completed the video. But before we look at that, let's take a look at what Opus 4.8 generated. Before, again, this was a past video. So in the past, I've already edited it with Remotion. So the completed video looks like this.
The speed and development in AI is crazy, and it can be overwhelming sometimes. You've probably heard of all the different models, workflow tools, and agents being thrown around, and saw a bunch of really cool demos on YouTube and Instagram. But how are they different, and which one should you use? This video is an easy to understand explainer of all the models, tools, and agents out there that people are hyping up about. What they actually do, what it is for you, without all the technical jargon. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of the differences between LLM models like GPT or Claude, and workflow tools like Claude Cowork or OpenAI's agent mode, and vibe coding tools like Claude Code and Codex, and agent tools like OpenClaw and Hermes. I'll also explain which one is best suited for your needs and role, depending on whether you're a business owner, an employee in a non-technical teams, or just somebody looking to optimize your efficiency. This is the AI explainer without the hype.
All right, that was the edited video by Opus 4.8, which I've actually published last week, or was it earlier this week? I'll link it up and down in the description below if you're interested. But full disclosure, I did edit this a couple times with Remotion. I did take like 2 or 3 times just to tweak some of the things that was not on brand and stuff like that. But even then, as you can see, it's not really giving me the logos at the start. And there were some minor things like, for example, this LLM models text is pretty hard to read against a gray background. I might be nitpicking here, but these are the things that I wish had been improved. And of course, the timing is somewhat a little bit off. But let's see if Fable 5's generation is much better than Opus 4.8. So let's take a look. This is Fable 5's animation, and I'm also going to play that on 2x.
The speed and development in AI is crazy, and it can be overwhelming sometimes. You've probably heard of all the different models, workflow tools, and agents being thrown around, and saw a bunch of really cool demos on YouTube and Instagram. But how are they different, and which one should you use? This video is an easy to understand explainer of all the models, tools, and agents out there that people are hyping up about. What they actually do, what it is for you, without all the technical jargon. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of the differences between LLM models like GPT or Claude, and workflow tools like Claude Cowork or OpenAI's agent mode, and vibe coding tools like Claude Code and Codex, and agent tools like OpenClaw and Hermes. I'll also explain which one is best suited for your needs and role, depending on whether you're a business owner, an employee in a non-technical teams, or just somebody looking to optimize your efficiency. This is the AI explainer without the hype.
All right. Well, I don't know what you guys think, but I think that's actually quite an improvement. I was talking about how I missed the logos, and here it's actually coming up with the right logos for everything. Would have been nice to have some sort of vectors to go with RAG and agents and MCP, but literally this is the first cut. I'm quite happy with it because, as I mentioned earlier, the cut that we've shown on Opus 4.8, those are kind of the second and third iteration, right? So it's not exactly a fair match. We're giving Fable 5 a bit of a handicap, but it's still coming up on top in this, I think. And of course, what I mentioned, the text that is hard to read, they actually did I think this is a border to make sure that it kind of pops out from the gray background. So really like that. And then what else? Yeah, I think in terms of timing, I really like that better. And overall, at the very end, without the hype, the little blue line below that kind of goes along with the end of the script, and the hype being in purple and the other being white. So just really good, classy touch in generating the visual animation. Head to head, I think Fable 5 wins this one, even though it's just the first iteration. So yeah, no surprises there. Fable 5 is better than Opus 4.8 in most of the operations. But again, with the 2x price tag, I'm not sure if I just rather run Opus 4.8 a couple more times or just go ahead with Fable 5. It really depends on what you're doing. I think personally, I would use Fable 5 for more complex tasks. If I'm trying to build a prototype of an app or trying to push the app into production and stuff like that. And even some of the editing stuff, if it was not too long a video and I want it to be really top-notch quality, I would probably use Fable 5. But for the rest of the stuff, I think Opus 4.8 could really bring you really far. And for most day-to-day tasks and workflows, I think is more than sufficient with Opus 4.8. So let me know what you think if you try Fable 5 and how it compares to other models. Drop a comment down below. And yeah, if you enjoy videos like these and find it useful, please consider subscribing and hit that like button. It really does help a lot, and I'll see you on the next one.